It is a murder case that has rocked a Clayton County community to its core. Right now, the parents of a 6-month-old baby are facing charges in their own child's death.
Both of them right now inside the Clayton County jail.
A 6-month-old baby boy. His tiny body was found dumped in the woods. And who stands accused of this? His own parents.
If people start looking at the signs, especially government, and taking proactive measures to step in, these things can be prevented. Like in this situation, a guy came forward with some guns and some drugs that this guy gave him. How would he have known to turn it into the police if he didn't know there was a missing child?
Evil isn't always a stranger in the shadows. Sometimes it's the person who's supposed to kiss you goodnight.
It is better for people to be warned and scared than not warned.
Hill of Justice is sponsored and produced by Jermaine Delmas Studios.
A 6-month-old baby boy named Nakaiya Pratt is no longer with us. Let that sink in. 6 months. A life that had barely begun, extinguished and discarded like trash. His tiny body was found dumped in the woods. And who stands accused of this? The two people who were supposed to be his ultimate protectors, his own parents. His father, Antonio Pierce, allegedly concocted a story about a robbery and a kidnapping. It can only be characterized as a desperate and flimsy lie. But that quickly unraveled. And as of earlier today, his mother, Nicolette Pratt, is accused of helping to sell that lie. While one twin is dead, the other is now awarded a estate. Her life forever fractured. Take a look at this.
It is a murder case that has rocked a Clayton County community to its core. Right now, the parents of a 6-month-old baby are facing charges in their own child's death.
A long list of charges for both of them facing charges, both of them right now inside the Clayton County jail. Let's start with the father right here, and this is what we learned by reading through that arrest warrant, and this is what we've learned. So he's charged with murder. Clayton County police allege that Antonio Pierce killed his 6-month-old son, Nakaiya Pratt, and tried to cover up the brutal crime by saying that he was robbed and the baby was kidnapped. Police had said from the start that Pierce's story just didn't add up. He was first arrested on making false statements and then hit with that new charge, including malice murder. The baby's mother, Nicolette Pratt, is now under arrest too. She's charged with party to a crime and making false statements, among others.
Now let's start with the father, Antonio Pierce. He's charged with malice murder. What does malice murder signify in a standard murder charge? Does not. Keith, what do people have to look at?
Well, in Georgia, there's 3 levels, so to speak. There's malice murder, there's manslaughter, and then there's involuntary manslaughter. So I guess what we'll do is work our way up. Involuntary manslaughter is you accidentally kill somebody. You wasn't intending to do it, but due to some type of negligence, you cause their death. Let's say hypothetically, you're playing with a bow and arrow, and it misses and it hits your neighbor, and he's cutting the grass. Well, you didn't mean to do that. It's involuntary manslaughter. And of course, the penalty is not as high. The next is manslaughter. The best way to describe that is in the heat of passion. Let's say a woman walks in and catches her husband in an act with someone, and she suddenly gets angry. She wasn't planning on killing him, but it happened in the heat of passion, and she got so overwhelmed by emotion, she killed him right when that happened. But when she was going home, she didn't intend to see that, didn't think anything was wrong, something happened. Malice murder we probably hear about it on TV when they say premeditated murder. And that's what that means. And it means that you actually plan to kill an individual, and you planned it out, and you concocted a story or a lie or whatever in order to carry it out. Now, I will have to say this. Sometimes it's not malice murder. Sometimes something happens and then they lie to cover up the murder. But premeditated means that you had an intention on killing a person and you carried it out.
Right. And so the prosecution believes that they can prove that this was done deliberately and it was malicious intent to kill. So they don't believe it was an accident, and that's why they charged this. And that's why we're looking at, in the eyes of the law right now, that this was a calculated act. And the state is alleging from this point right now that he intended to go ahead and end his son's life and then did so.
Well, Jerome, there's a lot of unknowns here. I don't know if there's a confession. I don't know if there's a witness. One thing we do.
There is a little bit of a confession. What he went about doing was he went and told this story. Of course, the story goes somewhat like this: that he was robbed. It was an armed robbery. He was robbed of $6,500, and on top of that, drugs. It was marijuana. Um, and then they took the car. Excuse me, they took the baby from the vehicle, from where he was. So they had, of course, they didn't believe him right from the jump. And I remember you and I talking about this on Sunday. And one of the things that you were concerned about was like, and what maybe was had a critical eye about was how come the Nixle system wasn't used by a particular law enforcement community? Remember that?
Right.
And so what happened was they didn't believe them from the jump from what they were saying. And they didn't want to go ahead and use that, nor the Amber system.
I got to correct you on that one. Okay, two things. There's a difference between a confession and an admission. And a detective or a confession is when you confess to everything. You're telling the truth, and you say, "Okay, I did this. This is how I did it." An admission is when you admit to some of the things that happened, but you leave out stuff and you lie. So whatever he said or did wasn't a confession. That was at best an admission.
No. He did a confession. And this is what his confession was. They got him up to the point where, hey, guess what? We double checked your story. Here's the witnesses. This is what they said. And then he said, you know what? I did this to him.
What did he say he did?
So basically what he said was he was complicit in hiding the body.
Mm-hmm.
And he made that, and I believe that was just basically the end of it. It wasn't the totality of the circumstances. And that's
did he say he killed the child? Because like I said,
no, he didn't say that.
Right, in an investigation, a confession is when a person comes forth and they says, "Hey, I killed my child, I killed my wife, this is how I did it." An admission is, "Oh, I was walking and all of a sudden he wasn't breathing. I tried to do something. And while I tried, I dropped the person." You're admitting to parts of it, but you're still being deceptive because you're trying to whatever. So that doesn't count as a confession in the world of detectives. So
Right,
there's admissions and confessions, right?
Right, I get that part.
Right.
And this is what we call staging. And for
Right.
people that don't understand that, this is when a criminal goes at this point in time and tries to set up the lay of the land so they could go ahead and mislead investigators like myself, you, and so on, and other things. They'll tell a small truth to go ahead and make it look and try to cover up a big tragedy or a big lie.
Exactly.
And so this is what he was doing.
Exactly. Exactly. Now, on the Nixle thing, here's the one thing. Nixle actually, and okay, first of all, for people who aren't aware of it, where this happened is a county where I was a sheriff. And I was once a member of the county police, and then I became the sheriff. We're one of those unique counties where we have a county police and a sheriff's office due to politics. It's really a waste of time and money. But because of the politics and because that's what certain commissioners wanted, we have both. Whereas a county right next to us, Fayette County, just has the sheriff's office. Well, the Nixle system is something that alerts the public and something that not just alerts them, but it helps us. Like if we have a missing child, we can actually send a text to hundreds of thousands of people with a picture of that child. That way, if they see it. When it first went out, it was initial that, hey, there's a child missing, unknown direction, unknown car description, but there was a picture of the child. That should have been put out. For some reason, it wasn't put out by the sheriff's office, which is kind of strange because that sheriff's office has used that system to put out town hall meetings and other stuff. But for what that was designed for, it wasn't done. But that's not the fault of the county police. but that system is used in conjunction because the sheriff's office and the county police usually respond to the same calls at the same time. So there was probably no excuse for that. Now the Amber Alert, uh, perhaps that was a reason for that. But anytime a child is missing, it's not whether you believe the person or not. The reason you need that information to go out is because someone may have seen something. And if they see that alert and they're like, well, wait a second, I just saw him with the child an hour ago or something like that, it gives us a chance to get information, because what makes it powerful is now, instead of just having the eyes and ears of the officers and the deputies, you now have the eyes and ears of the entire public, because every person that has a cell phone has a picture of this baby or have a picture of something, and someone may have seen something. So I don't know if I agree. It's not a matter of whether they're lying or not. A lot of times when they put out Amber Alerts, people are lying. The purpose of it is, have you seen this vehicle? Have you seen something that can help us put this together?
I think that's a good point. But I think with him calling the police and reporting this kidnapping, the moment he did that, it was over. It was so self-destructive in nature. I think it was catastrophic. It's going to be catastrophic for his defense team, because instead, it shows, a stream of consciousness, if you will. And really of it is guilt. Instead of for him trying to call for help, and showing remorse, his first instinct was deception. He's trying to save himself. He's not trying to save his son. And so they're going to, for him making that phone call, I mean, you could have had somebody else could have made that phone call, but for him to make that phone call, damn
Yeah,
it.
unfortunately, if anyone had made the phone call, it would have been an issue. And it's kind of like when people report their car stolen after they kill someone or after they rob somebody. Once something happens, they realize, okay, well, this happened connected to this car, connected to whatever. So I got to come up with with an alibi
hmm
and to put this on somebody else or whatever. So they know the car is registered to them. So then they report the car stolen. But usually by the time they report the car stolen, it's too late, because you're reporting after the fact. And unless there wasn't nothing to show the timeline, that usually fails. But people do stuff and then they panic, and okay, now he has a dead baby, and now he has to figure out, okay, how do I explain this? And there's he's trying to cover up, but at the same time, all he's doing is giving additional evidence.
Right, exactly. Because if I'm the prosecutor, all I'm doing is thank you for the gift. You helped us out, because obviously you're covering up from the beginning. So that's going to be big time a problem. And talking about a little bit about the Nixle alerts that you're talking about,
Mm-hmm.
as you're trying to go ahead and mobilize, man hours and so on and so forth. Of course, it brings a community in fear. So my question to you is this: although everything that you said was 100% correct, could you see a scenario where the county police or even the sheriff's department decides that, you know what, we know too much right now to go ahead and put out an alert like that and create that type of chaos?
No, I can't. And in the beginning, they didn't know no more than anybody else. I think if you're a sharp detective, here's what happens. A good detective hears a story and knows something is not right. And then he says, okay, let me tell you what really happens before I lock your butt up for lying. That's what good cops are supposed to be able to do instinctively. Unfortunately, it's nothing you can really train a person. It's something that they're born with, that we found out afterwards. But if you can find people who have that ability, you can train them to look for inconsistencies in stories. But when you have a situation like that, you got to leave all you you can't leave no stones unturned, because suppose you're wrong. So if a person says the baby is missing, you still got to put out an alert. We have a missing baby, because you don't know exactly what you got right at that particular moment, other than a missing baby. It doesn't sound right. I don't know if I believe this guy, but you've got to put everything out there, because if there's a chance that this child's alive, if there's a chance of something, and you didn't cover that, then that's a problem. Also, again, even if you're right, someone still may have seen something and they didn't realize what they were seeing. So by putting that information out to the public, we have a missing baby, this is what it looks like. Now you got thousands or hundreds of thousands of eyes and ears that will call you with information to let you know something is not right. Like in this situation, a guy came forward with some guns and some drugs that this guy gave him.
Let's talk
How would
about
he
that.
have known to turn that into the police if he didn't know there was a missing child? So that's why I said, that should have happened and it should have happened faster. But again, that Nixle system doesn't belong to the county police, so we can't fault them on that one. But anytime, there's always this thing about every time people make up an excuse, well, we didn't put it out because we didn't want anybody to be worried. Okay, that it is better for people to be warned and scared than not warned. I mean, if I smell smoke and I was like, well, I don't want to wake up Jerome because I don't want him to worry. And then the house gets fully engulfed, you would have wished I would have just woke you up or called you and say, hey, I smell some smoke coming from your house. So it's always better. At least that gives you the opportunity to say, hey, nah, it's just incense. Or, hey, there's a fire, thanks. So always better to be warned.
Right. So this guy, he obviously, the day before all of this goes haywire, the dad gives him a bag of drugs and a weapon. Uh, Are you calling this? How do you see that? Because I'm seeing this as part of the staging of this whole thing. But
Absolutely.
I can't, it's just so diabolically dumb. I just can't wrap my head around that. What's your thoughts on it?
Well, he doesn't appear to be the sharpest knife in the drawer anyway. But
Mhm.
but obviously since he told a story about somebody robbed him of that stuff, he wanted to get rid of that in order to but here's what I don't understand. Nobody even knew you had it to get rid of. And
Exactly.
then why would you admit to being robbed of drugs? You just admitted to having an illegal substance that you didn't have. So
Yeah. Yeah, that was good. I just thought that was, you could definitely tell that he was off his rocker then, and that he was certainly he was full of anxiety, and certainly he panicked because
exactly.
somebody could not think to do that with a right mind.
Right.
So that's where that goes in. Let's now turn to the mother, Nicolette Pratt. Now she's not charged with murder, but she is a party to the crime. I believe that's what I heard, and making false statements. So now we got to talk about her role into this. And the investigators believe that although she wasn't the one who delivered the fatal blow, but that she was complicit in the cover up of this. And so she allegedly knew what happened and chose to mislead the police.
I
Ugh,
I I I,
ugh,
I agree. I
ugh.
agree. So those charges could be forthcoming because I
Right.
mean, she's either accessory before or after the fact or during, and that has to be determined. Let me ask you this: have they determined the exact cause of death yet? Have they said exactly what this child died with? Blunt trauma, anything? Because I've been searching, but have you seen that yet?
No, but I do want to go ahead and talk about some clues. And the clue is he has a surviving twin sister.
Exactly.
So, what do we do as investigators? What do we do as detectives when we take a look at that? Well, guess what? This is exactly what we'll do. We have a child that is unalive, and we have a child that isn't. So, and they're the same age. Well, guess what? Once we take, unfortunately, that child is gone, we look at the individual, and that person, the twin sister, now becomes maybe even a silent witness. And I'll tell you how this is all set up. So, naturally, we're looking at what we call failure to thrive. And so they're looking at signs of long term neglect with the sister.
Of course.
Okay, so we're going to look for things like malnourishment. Of course, we're going to look for, untreated diaper rashes, maybe cradle crap, bruises, injuries, fractures, old injuries, things that are just healing. And this might set the stage later on in this battle that, hey, guess what? This is what happened to the sister. Let's look that it's reasonably a fair chance to believe that. And if they see something consistent in the autopsy with, unfortunately, her unsurviving twin brother, you could tie it together, connective tissues.
Absolutely. There's still some unknowns here. And once that autopsy release comes out, we'll know for sure. Like you said, it could be neglect. Uh, I know I had a friend of mine said that they thought it was odd that a 6 month old weighed 11 pounds. Um, I don't know what your thoughts on that. Matter of fact,
It is odd.
right. And so you're probably spot on with that observation right there. And then let's say hypothetically, there's nothing wrong with the surviving twin. There's a lot of unknowns right now until that autopsy comes out, because let's say it was accidental and they just two dummies that they panic and we're not going to be able to explain it, so let's come up with something different. I don't know how much of an accident it can be, but there have been times that I've worked deaths like that. Believe it or not, one of the saddest things I've ever seen is a parent is sleeping in a bed with a child, and they fall in a deep sleep and they roll
Roll
over
over
on
and
the
kill it.
baby,
Yeah.
and then they suffocate the baby and they wake up, and it wasn't their intentions to do that, and so it's really an accidental death. And I'm not saying that happened. I'm not saying it didn't happen. But some people panic because they figure, okay, well, they're going to lock me up for suffocating a baby, so I got to make up something different. Or some people just call and say, hey, this is what happened and whatever. And, it depends on who's in charge and what their discretion is, whether they're going to charge them or not. And there's some people they're going to charge you no matter what. And then there's some people they're going to say, well, it's an accident, whatever. But once we figure out the exact cause of death from that autopsy, whether it's blunt trauma, whether it's shaken baby syndrome, whether it's suffocation, then that's going to be a very telling side as to what the possibilities are, or eliminating some of the possibilities of how this child could have died.
Well, I will say this, and I got 2 points on that. Let's just say, hypothetically, that was the case. The parents
Right.
did roll over on the child. Your ass is grass anyway, and I'll tell you why. All the other lies that you told make it almost implausible to believe that it was just that. And there you go with, and then you self-incriminated yourself on the other stuff. And then you had the nerve to give it to somebody who had a felony in the first place, and they turned in what you gave them.
I agree. By they complicated. Let's say hypothetically that that's what happened, and we're not saying it is or whatever. By lying, you
Mhm.
complicate the situation. It's already bad enough as it is, but when you lie, because now you've committed a crime that, let's say they do prove it was an accidental death. Well, you still filed a false report of a crime because you're saying something that didn't happen,
Mhm.
and now you've complicated it with a gun and drugs and everything else. I know a lot. A lot of people are afraid of the criminal justice system because there are people who they know if it's an accident or not. There's someone there that'll try and charge you with murder, or aggravated assault, no matter what, just because they can. But the correct thing is not to do what they did. You just gonna have to go to court and have the evidence prove what it is. But lying and covering it up and trying to turn it into something it isn't is never gonna solve it. If it's an accident, it's an accident, and you're gonna have to just go and explain it's an accident and prove it's an accident, even if you come across some people who will try to prove otherwise just because they can or they want to.
Right. And then you have the individual, which is still beyond my bandwidth to think that he gave somebody as a felon, another felon, a weapon. And then on top of that, you give weight to somebody on top of that. You're not coming out of this unscathed at all.
No.
You are. And then on top of it, you get, and your wife or girlfriend, whatever she was, the child's mother, I mean, she comes in as a party to this and tries to help you out, whether she knew what you did was an accident or otherwise. It just muddies the water, and this is where they're going to have complications.
I agree, and we see people get into this all the time. You're a fugitive. A fugitive is a son, a boyfriend, a brother, a sister, and then they harbor, well, it's my brother, it's my boyfriend, or whatever, or somebody. I always tell people this. I said, listen, if somebody drives up to you and they're your best friend, and they say, listen, I need help. There's a body in the trunk. Well, number one, they're not your best friend, because if they were, they wouldn't drive and put you in a situation like that. But a lot of people feel obligated. Okay, hey, this is my best friend. There's a body in the trunk. I got to help him bury it. And this is why I always try to tell young people when I talk to them, because I see a lot of people get into situations like that, trying to help a friend cover up something. First of all, that's not your friend if they're going to bring you into it, like I said before. But second of all, you can't help them that way. The best thing you can say is, listen, let's turn yourself in. Let me get you an attorney. Let me put some money on your books. But if we bury this body, both of us are going to be in jail, and we can't help each other if we're both locked up.
Mhm.
So you shouldn't have brought this body to me, because I'm gonna have to report it. Why don't you just stand right here and let's go in, and let's see if we can get you an attorney. Let's see if we can get you in alive. I know a lot of people say, well, yeah, no, 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 no. That's the best thing to do, and somebody has to have the strength to do that. And
Right.
exactly, because you think you're helping, but you're not. And then it's almost like that proverbial, if you can't swim and you jump in the water to save someone and you both drown, what have you accomplished?
Right. And I think that that's one of the cultural blind spots, that a lot of people think that they're really helping somebody, and really you're damaging every single living thing around you when you do something
When you
like
do
that.
something like that, you're drowning
You know.
yourself. So I know that may be your son, your daughter, your boo, or whatever you want to call it. But by you trying to cover up a murder or anything else, all you doing is sinking yourself with that person, and you can't help him if you're in jail too. It's no different when you get on the airplane and they tell you, when that mask fall, put it on yourself first. Not because you're being selfish,
Mhm.
but you can't help anybody if you can't breathe. So now that I can breathe and you're not able to do it, now I can help you put it on.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
right.
Y So we're looking at these co-conspirators now, and what had this not happened, then you were talking about other questions for, the mother, because you could go ahead and say, was she coerced, or was she terrified, or was she just a willing partner in this horrific lie? And that's where we're left with at the end question, because the charges now suggest the latter more than anything else. And her allegations, or the at least the alleged actions, allow this death to be possible.
I agree. I mean, because she had an opportunity. If she was afraid, once the cops are there, she could have took one aside. Hey, listen, I need protection. This man killed our baby, and I need you to protect me. And I'm not going along with this or whatever like this. You know, that's what has to happen. And in my tenure as a robbery homicide detective, and my tenure as a sheriff, I've seen it both ways. I've seen kids kill people and parents harbor them and hide them and cover it over. Then I've seen other parents, hey, call, hey, I'm bringing him in. Look, I love you, son, but you shouldn't have done this. I'm gonna do the best I can for you, but you're not gonna hide here. You're not gonna do this here, and you're gonna turn yourself in.
Yeah. But like we always do with each and every case that we look at, when it comes to infanticide, is that we know there had to be other clues. This was not the one off. We know that he had an extensive record, but somebody had to know something, that there was problems there.
I'm glad you said that. One thing I want to say on this show before we go is this. I've heard people, and I've heard a police chief say that. And every time they say stuff like this, it irritates me. Like if there's a certain amount of murders, well, we did have a certain amount of murders, but 20 of them were domestic, and there's nothing we can really do about that. That's a lot. There is something you can do about that. When I went to Scotland Yard and I went to study their techniques, Scotland Yard actually had a lawsuit filed against them for domestic murders. holding them liable for it. And what came out of it is they found a more proactive way to do it. A lot of people think murders can't be prevented, and I'm not saying they can be prevented 100%, but they can. There are things that can be done. If there's situations where you got a record of domestic violence, there are things you could do proactively, like follow-ups, people going to the house to check on it. Making sure they're separated from that moment on, doing certain things so that he doesn't, and I'm not going to just say he, because sometimes a woman kills a man, but by doing that, they were successfully able to reduce the domestic homicide rate. So, anybody interested, you get in touch with Scotland Yard, they have a protocol how they handle it. And once they did it, they saw their domestic homicides go down. Did they eliminate 100%? No. But by being more proactive, instead of just taking a report and leaving, we're able to reduce it. And of course, we know you can reduce gun violence and murders like that. We already know the technique for that. We've done that. I did it in Clayton County. And actually, I did a little of both. I did it with the domestic violence with my stalking unit, and then I did it with other proactive units. So even in a situation like this, Department of Family Children Services, people being alert and seeing things that don't look right, is probably going to find out something where those kids probably could have been removed from the home a lot earlier. And, there's this thing now where people are afraid to do anything because, well, I don't want to say this, or if we get too proactive, we're going to get sued or whatever. But if people start looking at the signs, especially government, and taking proactive measures to step in, these things can be prevented. Can you prevent anything 100%? No, but they can be prevented. I wouldn't be surprised if once there's a after action report done and this whole thing is looked at, that we don't see that one time, that one police report, that one call, or something somebody saw and didn't say something or didn't do something. We don't know if defects have been in that house before or not. All that's unknown. But I wouldn't be surprised if we find out that there was some type of action could have been taken on someone, be it government or be it someone that saw something, that this child might not still be alive today.
Yeah. And thinking of Nakaiya Pratt's life, we can easily say that, evil isn't always a stranger in the shadows. Sometimes it's the person who's supposed to kiss you goodnight. And that's what their tragedy is. A father who can, do this to their kid, a mother who can go ahead and follow up and help him allegedly. This is all, it's no good at all. So, his life was stolen from him. And unfortunately now it's the twin sister who's going to have to come up in this world, who in one fell swoop lost her mother, lost her father, and certainly lost her.
She lost a brother. I don't know if she lost a mother and a father, but we'll
You know
leave it
what?
at that.
I think that's perfectly said. So if you felt this episode pushed the conversation a little bit further, help us and keep building this community. And certainly like the video, drop a comment. And what's your take about this situation? It's very unfortunate and tragic situation. And make sure you hit that subscribe button so you never miss the next episode. Don't forget, comment your thoughts. And on today's case, we'll highlight the best ones. Until then, see you in the next episode.